Hey guys, today we're going to go over how to install the Goalrilla GS60 basketball system. And the hardest part of this process is digging the hole and running the concrete, which we will not be going over. It took us several days, weeks to get that done, so I didn't get that all videoed. But here we are taking the goal and all of the pieces out of the boxes. Like I said, once you get the hole dug and the concrete and the anchor system put in, the rest of it's pretty straightforward, just going through the instructions. But you'll see here all the pieces and the unboxing of everything. One of the things that they recommend doing is putting the pole up on sawhorses, which I agree is a really good idea. So you'll see that here in the next step, and then set the pole on those sawhorses so that we can attach the post brackets, which is the first step. Okay, here's all the hardware. It comes real nice laid out. It's where you can just cut around the areas that you need to pull out for the bolts and washers. Step one is going to be, you'll need the hex head bolts number 25, 4 flathead washers number 47, and 2 lock nuts number 24. And so it all pushes them in there puts them in there separated nice. And so as you can see, what I'm doing is just cutting out what I need when I need it. So we'll get those first 4 bolts and washers to apply or to use for the brackets. One of the things that I like to do is get the washers on the bolts before I get over to where I'm going. That way I know I have everything that I need. So I'm just laying it out here on the workbench. So I make sure I have the brackets and all the bolts and washers and nuts I need. Okay, now we're going to attach those brackets with the bolts that we laid out. And as you can see, those go on the outside of the brackets on the pole. And these brackets are going to be used to hold the adjustable actuator that you'll need to raise and lower the goal. So that's the first step here, is securing those brackets to the pole. That's a 3/8 socket. Okay, so now that we got the brackets on, we need to actually get the actuator sleeve and assembly out of, and it comes in its own separate box. So here you can see we're taking that out, and we will attach that to those brackets that we just put on the pole. So these are the bolts that will go into those brackets, and they're attached or already in the actuator itself. So you have to take those off, and then we'll grab one of the long bolts here out of the hardware package. And right here I was just showing that you need to make sure that you put the plastic washers, anything that's going to touch metal, you need to make sure there's a plastic washer on that so that it prevents it from rusting. So I was just showing how those washers and lock washers are stacked on there. And then what's helpful as you're on the sawhorses is to put a block of wood underneath that actuator so that it's a little bit better lined up, so this process can go better. Okay, now here's where we're sliding that sleeve into the top of the actuator, putting the cap on and then putting that sleeve so that the bolt can run through that. And that's where the arms that attach to the backboard will attach to the actuator. That's a 1/2 inch socket that we're using on these. The next step is going to be attaching the arm, the lower arm that attaches to the backboard onto the actuator. And again, here I'm just showing how the washers go onto that bolt so that you have the plastic washers in the right places. It's helpful to have a couple of guys here to hold things. You could probably do it by yourself, but as always, it's nice to have a second set of hands. And there I'm sliding that plastic washer in. And having done a couple of these, I think I said it before, I do recommend leaving the bolts and washers and everything in the hardware packet that it comes in and only cutting them out when you need them. That way you're not struggling to find what you need and they get moved around and put into the wrong place, and you don't have to worry about that because it's all right where it should be. Again, here we're putting those plastic washers in. Make sure it's plastic on metal instead of metal on metal. And you don't want to get these bolts super tight yet. We're just snugging them up so that we can move the pole around, and then once we have the pole installed onto the anchor system and the backboard on, that's when you'll go and snug up the rest of the bolts. Okay, now we're ready to attach the arms, the top arms that attach to the backboard, and these will attach to the top of the pole. Oh yeah, and you want to make sure that that's the weep hole. Make sure that's pointed down. So if there does happen to get any water in that tubing there, it will drain out and not sit in there and rust it from the inside out. Now we're ready to set the pole on top of the anchor. And this right here takes, the instructions say you need 4 adults. So we had 2 adults and several kids, and we were able to get it done. You can kind of see in the video here, it tips forward just a little bit to kind of give us all a good shock, but it worked out. I think right here it kind of tips forward on us, and everybody helps to get it stabilized. And then once you get it set on the bolts, now you want to get the washers and the nuts and get those put on, and go ahead and snug those down. Make sure everything's level and square. If it's not, you can adjust the nuts underneath the pole to make sure that that pole is level on all 4 corners, or on all 4 sides. Again, this is a 1/2 inch. I use a 1/2 inch deep socket for that. Now on installing the backboard, this gets a little tricky. I've done this before with a couple of ladders, but the best way I've found to do it is from the back of a pickup. If you have one handy, that works the best, and having 3 guys is helpful here to hold the lower end of the backboard in to just get that secure. And again, here you want to make sure that you have your plastic washers installed in the right spots, and just get that lower part of the backboard aligned, and then have someone run that bolt through, and then that takes a lot of the weight off. So now you're just holding the top. So once that gets secured at the bottom, then we can put on the upper arms, which is what we're doing here. And again, you just want to make sure everything is connected. Don't snug anything up just yet. We'll wait till you've got all of everything installed before you snug all the bolts. So once you get both sides in, now it's held up by the pole, and other than digging the hole and installing the concrete, probably holding the backboard up there long enough to get all the bolts on is probably the third most difficult piece of it. Now that you have the backboard all installed and secured, now it's time to attach the rim. This is installed with 4 bolts. I believe these are 3/8 again. And having someone hold the rim in place and hold the bolts in place while you put the nuts on definitely helps. And then here's just a shot from underneath the back part of the backboard as someone's holding the bolts. Allowing me to put the nuts and the washers in. Again, this is a 3/8 socket, and you can go ahead and snug these down, as this is the only bolts that are holding on the rim. So now's a good time to go ahead and tighten those up. Okay, now is the metal piece that goes on the front of the rim to keep the spring and the breakaway part of the rim from being exposed. And this is just Phillips head screws that attach and hold that together. And again, like I said before, having a pickup and standing in the back is very handy. It's much nicer than a ladder. Once you get the net on, that is it. Thanks again for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe.